Hello, everyone. I'm Mike Bowers. I'm the Center Director for the Ohio Small Business Development Center at Columbus State Community College. I want to welcome everyone to the January 2024 edition of Small Business Breakthroughs. We're excited to have our guest today, Renee Vidor, and I think it's going to be excellent, and we'll get into that in just a moment. As always, we are partnering on this event with the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center. And I am actually in a different place than I historically am, which is by design. This is actually my office here at the deck. And we they have a lot of different space, a lot of different things to kind of work for the individuals that are interested in entrepreneurial activities and need some support, whether it be office space or different things like that. And today we are excited to have Susie Gillian to talk about the deck. And she is also in one of the deck spaces today. So, Susie, you want to kind of chat about the deck for a minute?
Sure. I'm delighted to represent Chaz Frutel, who's the director of and founder of the Dublin Entrepreneur Center in partnership with the City of Dublin and the SBDC and Columbus State Community College. It is a place designed to help startup businesses and small businesses create your future and even larger businesses as well. So we create a collaborative environment where business owners can cross paths and encourage each other, do business with one another. We've had a lot of movement here this year and new tenants coming in this year, but we do still have some available spaces. And that ranges from a very small portion, like a hot spot where this can be your daily workspace and you work from home, but to small offices, cubicles, and even larger offices that can hold up to 2 or 3 or 4 employees. So a wide range of office spaces where actually even meeting rooms and conference rooms are with your tenancy here. You're free to use those and schedule them at your leisure. So this has been a long time relationship between Chaz and Mike and Bruce, and we're just delighted to be part of the call today and looking forward to hearing Renee speak with all of us. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Appreciate it. As Susie mentioned, I think the value of the deck, the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center, and co-working spaces in general for entrepreneurs is to really get them to connect and have some support, maybe have some mentors and have some other folks that can support them along the way, and or even have individuals that provide services that maybe they can use, different things like that. So that's one of the things we do with the Small Business Development Center here. But also for individuals that are, entrepreneurs, small business owners that are looking to connect, I would say that this is where I met Renee, was at the Dublin Entrepreneurial Center back, I won't say how long ago, but it's been a while, where we used to do stuff prior to the pandemic, and always had a great experience being able to kind of chat, pick her brain, get to understand some of the things that she's involved in. And since then, she's done some amazing work. She's also written a book called Measuring Up: How to Win in a World of Comparison, and done a lot of different things on the entrepreneurial side. So with that, I want to welcome Renee Vidor to Small Business Breakthroughs.
Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so thank you so much for being here. I know you had a number of things going on today. You're a very busy person. I appreciate you carving out a few minutes to chat with us here today. For those of you that are joining us live today, I appreciate it. If you have questions, if you have comments, you have anything, feel free to put those in the chat. Bruce and I will be keeping an eye on that and be able to answer some questions and ask some questions and do things based on that. With that, again, we're going to go to Renee here, but I would say that, again, my experience having done some work with Renee, being around her, being really around her whole family. I mean, this is an entrepreneurial family. She's an entrepreneur. Her husband's a successful entrepreneur, and her son's a successful entrepreneur. He's how old? Is he 18?
He's 18. Yeah. He's
Yeah.
actually taking some classes at Columbus State there as well as OSU.
Yeah, well, we appreciate that to pay the bills. But I actually met her son. How old was he when he went through the YEA program? It had to be like 13, 14, maybe
He was in
something.
6th grade.
Yeah, sixth grader. Went through an entrepreneurial training program that Chaz Frutel had put together, and I was one of the instructors, and was always really impressed with him, the things he was pulling together, things he was doing, and since then he has really continued to move forward. So that's a tribute to you and Josh and the work that you guys have done as parents. So congratulations there. And with that, let's jump in here. Why don't you kind of share some of your experiences, your journey, kind of what's gotten you to where you are today?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And if anyone has any questions in the comments, please go ahead and ask. I would say that when Mike and I met, it probably was around 2015 or so, I'm going to guess. And I
Yeah.
was going to the deck because I was searching. I knew that I had an entrepreneurial spirit, and I knew that I had been a stay-at-home mom doing little small things with little companies at times. But I was really searching for what was my thing. What was it that I was called to do in the world? And as I went, I got to learn from other people, rub shoulders with so many great people like Mike, who is very helpful. I highly recommend the SBDC and the deck. So many great people there. And it really helped me to start to discover more about who I was and what it was I was called to do. So what I started doing back in 2015, 2016 was one-on-one coaching. And that was something I enjoyed doing. I still do some of that, but I got burnout, honestly. My background psychology, and the reason I did not go into counseling was because I knew that I would take it home with me. It would be something that was just a lot. And so I realized pretty quickly that I enjoy helping people in a group atmosphere. I love doing workshops. I've been through a lot when it comes to identity, and that's where some of my book content has come from when it comes to the topic of comparison. So if that's something as a small business owner or an entrepreneur that you struggle with, I can relate, been there. Still, I think it's a journey for all of us, but I've learned a lot about that. And what I'm doing now is I'm actually getting ready to start a nonprofit, working on that, learning. Those are my goals for this year. And what I would say in addition to that is I am still working with college students, love that as well, doing mentoring and leadership development and speaking. So those are a few things that I've been involved with most recently.
And what was it that kind of encouraged you to go down the author path to kind of to build this book out?
That's a great question. When I was a kid, I always wanted to be an author. When someone said, what do you want to be when you grow up? I'm like, an author. But it was because I loved books. It wasn't because I actually thought about writing a book. It was just the desire to consume them. As I got older, I was no longer enthralled with books because college cured me, if anyone else can relate to that. But you see, I went through a lot when it came to learning more about myself. And I'll share a little bit here. This may be a little bit, if you don't know much about my story, maybe a little bit much, but at the same time, some of you might be able to relate with something similar. Back in 2019, I was getting ready to publish that book. And honestly, the reason I even wrote it in the first place was because people kept telling me that they needed the content that I was sharing with them on a regular basis about comparison. They're like, you need to write a book. So I went ahead and did that. I wrote it. It took a long time. I don't recommend it for those who don't like a lot of work, like me. But at the same time, I did that. And then I got really sick. and started to really question, is this book even going to be helpful for anyone? Because you see, I had taken off a lot of the masks and I had learned how to win in a world of comparison as a small business owner, as a mom, as somebody that likes to go out and network and an extrovert. I learned how to not compare myself physically, my achievements, all of that. However, you see, there was something that was hiding that I hadn't actually dealt with, and I didn't even know it was an issue. So I was getting sick because I had something that is still controversial, but it's called breast implant illness. I'd had breast implants for 9 years, no problems whatsoever. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, I got really sick. So here I am. I have all of the information out to the editor. The book is written, and I get the edits back, and I'm so sick I can't even process the edits. I find out what's going on. I have those removed, but I'm scared. What if this entire book I just wrote about comparison doesn't work now? Because now I've just altered something about myself. And can anyone else relate with that fear of imposter syndrome? Of what you are putting your business, what you've put out into the world, the ideas, the things that you feel called to do, and all of a sudden you have this little hiccup. It's like, well, great. What if everything I'm doing is actually not helpful? What if all my goals that I've set are not going to be met because I was on the wrong track? And that's where I was. However, the cool thing is that whole process that I had used, the WIN method in my book, worked exactly the same for when I had those breast implants removed. And I got my health back. So there's the really quick story. Within 3 weeks, I was able to speak at the women's ministry retreat that I was supposed to speak at. Within 6 weeks, I was on stage with a 600-person international business conference. And they asked me to share that story. And I was like, oh, this is awkward, but I did. So it's something that really, I think, when you learn your pain, when you learn that you have something that you've worked through, and people start to ask you, like, hey, I want this, you kind of have a little bit of a duty to find a way to get it out to people. And I could not talk to absolutely everybody. I couldn't share that story with everybody. So the book was one way to do that. And I had good connections in order to do that.
Yeah, great. You know, the last couple of guests that we've had on here, they've had amazing stories, different things like that. And I've always asked them where the book is, but you've already had the book, so I can't ask you that particular question. But yeah, it's you got it there. So yeah, it is difficult. I mean, it's difficult, I think, to especially for business owners and entrepreneurs to kind of separate personal and business, especially for those small business owners that basically they're the business. Whatever the legal structure is doesn't matter. I mean, it's all about them. And what are your thoughts? I mean, as it relates to being this small business owner who has built a business, maybe has employees, different things like that, and has built a whole brand up around the business, has their LinkedIn profile, and their LinkedIn profile is all them and everything else. And then they, kind of like you discussed, but, you know, how do they need to kind of go about after they've done all this, kind of figuring out how to separate the brand from them in their personal?
That is an important question. I'm going to answer it in a way that may not be what everyone wants to hear, but I think it's individual. I really believe that every business is different and every structure is different. I'll share with you for me personally, and then perhaps maybe a couple of clients I've worked with to give some examples that would be a little different. For me personally, I realized that I am my brand. It doesn't matter what I put out there. If I put something out there, I'm representing my business, whether it's coaching, speaking, or I personally do not have employees. So I feel like that's not necessarily going to apply to that. But I do represent those that work with me, that collaborate with me. And it's important that whatever I put out there is on brand with all of that. And that can lead to a lot of just tension, right? If you have things out there that maybe are private and you want to keep that separate. Now, something that is also a little difficult is when you put your personal life out there, you have to wonder, okay, are people going to come and is that going to create lack of boundaries? That's what I ran into. I realized that as I was sharing more about my business and intertwining my business and personal, which can be scary. It can be scary from a personal side to talk about your business because you feel like everyone is wanting, they're like, oh my gosh, you're selling or you're, it's wrong to do business. There are those people, you might have those people in your family or in your circle. And on the other side, it's also difficult because from a business side, you're like, but this is my personal. I don't really want you to know everything about me or about my family or whatever. So finding that line that cannot be crossed, you have to create boundaries. Those boundaries are going to look different for each person. What I found for myself was that I am open on LinkedIn, like you mentioned. On LinkedIn, I would love to connect with absolutely everybody. I feel like it's an open boundary for me. If anyone crosses over and they are unprofessional, I can disconnect with them and no problem. Facebook, I used to keep it completely shut down, just personal. I've changed that. I now have what's called, and some of you may have done this as well. I do have a business page, but honestly, business pages are half dead. They're basically little corpses that are there that Meta's keeping up so that we can still pay them for ads. And no, I'm not a social media guru. I just listen to a bunch of them. So don't ask me for too much social media help. But that being said, the business page is important to have and to keep up, especially if you have employees and you are not a personal brand. I think that especially if your audience is out there on Facebook, many of them are because Facebook is definitely still there. But here's the thing, since you are not reaching many people, you have to throw it in people's faces if you want them to see it. So what I found for myself was I went ahead on my personal profile and there's a button you can click. It's called professional. So mine is technically a professional profile, which means that I have followers and I can put content out that is either public or friends only. And so I get to make that choice. And you get to make that choice whether you have a private account or not. But this just makes it a little more official. And now that I can have followers, I found it's a very good reach. The algorithm they're putting a lot of preference on it. So that means that I keep a little bit private. Like when I celebrated my great aunt's 100th birthday party this weekend in Arizona, I didn't tell the whole world that I was leaving my home, right?
Right.
But that's a boundary. But I will now do a report publicly. And because it's on brand for me, I will do a long form post and share about that experience because it will benefit my audience. So learning individually how to create those boundaries. I don't accept friend requests from people that I don't know, except actually, I think I just saw Lucienne was on and she and I didn't know each other before. Maybe it was LinkedIn. I forget. Sometimes I get things mixed up. But when I saw her on Facebook, I'm like, oh, let's connect. We haven't met in person yet, but we're going to, and we're like-minded people. So I'm now connecting with people on Facebook and building my business brand and connections on there as well. So that's a little about social media. And maybe that's not quite where you're going, but I feel like in our generation, that's a huge part of it.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. So to kind of stick a little bit with this, and I'm not going to ask you to get into the mechanics of the social media component, but you know, things have changed because of social media, not just, all of the electronic mechanisms to reach people and do different things of that nature. And um, we didn't really talk about this, but what's your experience? So you talked about some of the things you do to kind of share what you're doing and different things like that. Um, do you see what challenges do you see with okay, so you have this electronic mechanism, and a lot of people will create this mask behind the electronic. So, this is the persona I've created, this is what I'm doing, and then they're trying to push that out, but that creates this conflict. for them and this comparison. So now I'm saying, okay, I'm great, I'm this, I'm that, I'm the other. But as I sit back on the other side of the keyboard, I start to think, is this really me? Mm-hmm. So you mentioned imposter syndrome a little bit earlier. I mean, what do you recommend for especially small business owners to kind of deal with that, maybe beyond a little bit what you just talked about? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that is so important. We're all going to deal with imposter syndrome. It's not foreign to any of us. We may not really understand what it is, but it's kind of that little voice in your head that's saying, like, are you really as good as you think you are? Or like, you can't actually do that. Like, yeah, you think that you're good at this, but you actually aren't. So it's sometimes the negative self-talk. And other times it can be fueled because of other people saying something. And when you go out on social media or when you have a business, you're going to eventually have haters. And by the way, that's a good thing. Because when you have haters, then you know that you have tried, you're going to fail forward. It means you've actually reached some people and you've met someone who's not your audience. Good job. I mean, that's awesome. But that can fuel some of that imposter syndrome. So personally, what I've had to do, and I think over the last, gosh, probably the last decade this has been something I've been working through as a journey, is I've had really low self-esteem. And self-esteem is it's just an overused word for, I didn't think I didn't have self-worth. I didn't think I was very good. I thought that everybody else was better than me in business and everything. And the truth is, I just didn't have clarity. I didn't have clarity around who I was, like my identity. And so as a small business owner, it's easy for us. We can go to all of these trainings that we want, and we can get basically a PhD in business vision, in how to market and how to put ourselves out there. But the truth of the matter is, if you don't first get a PhD on who you are individually as a leader, as a business owner, as someone who is teaching others, whatever your business is, you're selling products to people, you are helping employees along their journey because they're a life that matters too. And I hope if you're here, you're investing in your team. That's important. But if you yourself have not done the work internally, now's the time. It's not too late. So don't feel like, oh my gosh, well, I missed the ship. No, it's not too late. But it is so important to go and get that PhD on your own identity because your personal being of who you are, who you're created to be inside, is actually your business is an outward expression of that. So you can sit here and you can make up all these things about your business, and they can be all good things. But to be honest, if you don't even know who you are, you're grabbing them from other places, you're patching together what you like, and then you are going to be basically trying to promote or sell something that you don't even connect with. You just like it. You just thought it was a good idea. And if you don't have that personal connection with it, like you've done the work to know that like this is something that whether it's a product, a service, it does not matter. If you don't actually back it 100% by connecting because you know who you are, you're going to fail. And I can say this pretty clearly because I've watched it happen, especially with small businesses. You might, with a larger business, have someone who steps in and they can fake it and they can hire people to make it work and all that. But we're here on the ground floor and we're making this happen. So you are the tool. You're the one who is there. So you need to do the work to really know who you are. And then that way, when the imposter syndrome comes, you can speak back to it. So some of the things that I speak back is I'm like, when I hear the thing like, well, who are you to coach that person? I mean, they're a leader in a corporation. And Renee, you've never worked corporate. So how in the world could you do that? And my first thought would be like, oh my gosh, you're right. But I take that thought and I use what I use in my book. You can read about. It's called the WIN method. I weigh that thought. I'm like, what is the cost of that? Well, I'm not going to go after that client, or I'm not going to serve them well if I don't believe I can. So that's not going to serve me. So then I go to the I, which is the identity, and I've already innovated my identity. I know who I am now. So I go back to the truth of who I am. It's like, wait a minute, Renee, you're a human being, just like this person's a human being. You've already dealt with a lot of the same issues. You don't have to run a corporate company in order to. Therefore, how in the world do you think you can help? Well, because you've helped other people with the same issues. They're just in a different position. And so I remind myself of who I am and of what my capabilities are as well. And then the N is navigate. There's WIN, in case I didn't make that clear, win. The N is navigate my journey. And I navigate my journey by saying, I talk back to that little imposter thing on my shoulder and I say, I'll keep it clean. But I'm like, okay, you're done. Go away. I'm done with you because I know who I am and I'm going to go talk to that client with confidence because they need my help and I'm going to be able to make an impact. So those are some of the things, but first you have to know who you are in order to win, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And, when you talk about the kind of the difference between, or knowing who you are, I think that's really critical because I've seen a lot of people that get so wrapped up in the business persona. This is what I am. This is what I am. That in the private times, they start to think that maybe again, it's not true. And unfortunately, a lot of times that leads to, really negative behavior that ultimately blows up the entire thing. And that's why it's so critical to be able to kind of step back and say, this is who I am as a person that's driving what's going on. And then, we'll talk about the mechanics of the business components to that too, because everything really is driven by people, regardless. I mean, I don't, whether it's, Google and Nationwide or these big players, or, it's just a one person shop. Um, you mentioned, kind of grabbing different things from different places and trying to, utilize that for yourself. Now, um, obviously, your book is the first go-to that everybody should go to. But what do you do? I mean, I get unsolicited emails all the time. You're on LinkedIn. I mean, here's this class, here's that, here's this newsletter, here's this book. Um, it can get pretty overwhelming just trying to figure out, what's real and what's not real. What are your thoughts there?
Yes. So
Mhm.
I'm somebody with ADHD brain and inattentive. And so a lot comes in my face that can overwhelm me. I can highly, like, I even think about it. I think about my email inbox and I just about hyperventilate. So I'm like, okay, don't think too much, Renee. But the truth of the matter is there are so many messages everywhere. There's unsolicited, there's solicited that you want to make sure and deal with. But I found that I've had to give myself a lot of grace. I've had to set my goals and my using the ADHD example, I have to hyper focus on what's important to me. And if I don't know what's important to me, and if I don't narrow down the scope of all those things that are everywhere, just like bring it into what is going to really move the needle for me or for those that I'm going to be able to help, then I'm going to be going every which way. And I do want to clarify when I said that Mike and I, we met back in 2015 or so, and I was going to that's what I was doing. I was at that point in my life where I was bouncing around different places, trying to figure that out. And we do that. It's practice, it's learning, it's finding out. I think you have to go through that to realize, oh, well, this right here doesn't really resonate with me. And I'll say wasted, 2 hours of my time, which is important, right? Our time is a valuable resource, but it's not wasted if we know then that we can cross that off. If we know that that's either an avenue or maybe it's you read an email that took a whole lot of time, unsubscribe right now. Don't let it come back and bite you again. So we can learn from all of these things coming at us. And sometimes we can even bulk learn and bulk say, okay, right now my focus this year isn't going to be on one-on-one coaching. So if I'm going and I'm trying to learn or I'm trying to keep up specifically in that arena, I'm probably wasting my time when really what I need to be doing is more of, for myself personally, learning more about that nonprofit world. So knowing what your goals are right now, it might change. We have different seasons, will help us to filter and have filters set so that our time is honored and our brain energy, because if you're anything like me, you only have limited resources of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a good advice. So I'm going to go in and delete everything from Bruce that's come to me and block him for the future. So we'll get him all taken care of there. Um, so let's do this. And I do want to emphasize, I do love the point that you say, time is valuable. And I think sometimes people don't value their time. And it's really critical that you know, like you said, read it, delete it, read it, file it, do whatever. And I'm not the greatest at it either, but I do try to respect the time that I have. So with that, let's jump a little bit. Let's start talking some more about goals and personal goals, business goals, different things of that nature. So as you are here today, what is this, the 25th of January? We're at the beginning of 2024. 2024 is going to be an amazing year for everyone. What do you recommend in terms of this goal setting, personal goal setting, business goal setting, to get yourself moving into 2024? 23 could have been great, but I'm a big believer that you've got to sit back, you've got to assess where you're at, and then you've got to reset some of these goals. Some of them may be the same goal and it may be the same result, but there's going to be other things that you got to really set back on. So talk a little bit about this goal setting process and what's your philosophy around that.
Sure. I've tried different things throughout the years. Something that has worked best for me right now in the last probably 2 or 3 years is, and it's a way that I initially started coaching, is I look at a holistic approach. And I don't believe in New Year's resolutions, even on a personal basis, but I believe in intentions. And that might be a mindset shift for some of you because it was for me. When I started looking, when I changed the word goals, I still use it because that's kind of how most people talk about it. But when I shifted it in my mind to intentions, it took some of the pressure off. And I think pressure is one of the reasons that we don't actually achieve all of our goals, because we see it, we're like, oh, this is exactly how it has to be. And oh, I didn't hit it, so now I failed. And when we look at ourselves as losers, or if we realize we're not going to reach something, then our brains don't even try anymore. I mean, it's just psychology. So for me personally, I look at it with intentions, and I like to have a Google Doc where I put, and I might actually, because sometimes I struggle to remember words when I'm on the spur of the moment. So there's 5 different areas that I put on this Google Doc. We actually sit down as a family. Now, we talked about personal and professional personas. That being said, I actually, even though I do put them as separate arenas, I see them very intertwined. So I do all of this at the same time. I don't necessarily separate and say, oh, this is my business goal planning, this is my personal, because if my personal life is not moving forward, if I'm not having growth, I don't mean around the waistline. Sometimes that means you are growing or shrinking. I don't know. That can be one of your goals. But if you're not growing, then you're not going to be able to grow your business if you're not growing personally, if you're not moving forward. So I have, let's see, relationships. And that involves business as well as personal relationships is one area that I set goals in. And we do this, like I said, for my kids, family, all of us. We have financials. So that can be sometimes it's a hobby, sometimes it's, for some, it's a business, for others. It's also different avenues of my business. So if I want to make this certain amount, or I want to have this many people in my membership or whatnot, then we set those. And then there is health, like physical, I call it physical. And that involves exercising because we all, I don't want to say should do it because I hate shoulding all over ourselves, but at the same time, like it is essential. If we're not moving our bodies, then I mean, it's going to decline our health. It's going to decline our brain activity. There are so many things that are affected, which then affects our business. So this is really important as business owners who many of us are sitting at a computer desk too often. So it's important. So I said physical. For me personally, spiritual. I believe that everybody is a spiritual being, and this is this is actually like one of my I do a lot of spiritual coaching. So this is like one of my largest areas. So how am I growing spiritually? What is it that what does that mean to me? Because you may think of SMART goals and you're like, well, how can you put a SMART goal? Well, no, I actually do. I am able to make measurable goals and such. And the last one, see, this is what I know. I always like, I'll have some and then I'll come to the last one. Um, Physical, spiritual, relational, financial. I think, is it passion? Oh, here we go. Personal development. I knew it started with a P. So personal development, I have my goals right there. What was I thinking? Personal development is really important, and that goes along with my passions as well. So I want to be growing personally. I want that may be like for this last year, it was what reading I was going to be doing because I wanted to be growing and learning, and then I'd get specific about this is the type of book. So like for this year, I decided I wanted some more specific reading, and I'm currently reading on generosity. So I have a few books lined up. I love to read. I struggle with it, so I do audiobooks. And here's what's really cool. And I know I'm tangent a little bit here, but with goals in general, if they're intentions, that means that they can change. I look at these quarterly. That's what I do personally. But I found that some of these goals, as I set them, I actually need to look at either monthly, weekly, sometimes even daily and change them. Reading last year was that for me. I was struggling. I put down a goal, was my last year here. I think it was to read one book a month, or it was so many pages a day or something. And I didn't know which one was going to be a better fit for me to make it measurable. Turns out neither one were good for me. When I put it down to specifically how many a month, because of the way that I'm wired, honestly, there are times where I can hyper focus and I can get a book read like in a day. And there's other times where it is so hard for me and I'm on a book. I'm not going to comprehend any of it if I just try to get through it. So I had to change those goals. And now I'm on a great way of doing that. I listen whenever I can on audiobooks. And I also have added in, I'm reading instead of one book at a time, I'm actually reading about three and I have them in different places. So with your business goals, your personal goals, make them not so rigid so that you'll actually find out what that goal should be for you, like what's going to help and work best for your business. And like I said, your personal life as well.
So let me ask you this. So I like the point you made about reviewing the goals periodically. So from a business standpoint, we often recommend people set a budget. Typically in the fourth quarter, you set the budget up for the next year, because that's when your business tax year and things of that nature. So you set the goal up, you set the budget up. And then unfortunately, what a lot of people do is that they set it up and they just go. And, you know, this opportunity comes in, let me jump on that, but that then pulls away from this opportunity and this. So again, by not staying focused on what your goal, what your budget, what your plan is, that you will get distracted. It's really easy to get distracted. And we always recommend that. That's really why you create a budget. You know, people don't want to create budgets. You know, when Bruce and I and the rest of the team, you know, when we're talking to clients and we want them to create a budget, you know, I don't want to create a budget. Bruce always talks about, you know, he works with a lot of startups who have these amazing 12, 15 page plan, basically 12, 15 pages of why I'm so great. Yeah, there's no financials, there's no nothing else, but you know, it does a lot of that. So that's where we got to kind of shift folks. But when let's say that you set up, I'm kind of pivoting here from what I was talking about. When you set up your kind of your plan, what you're wanting to do, you do your assessments. I know that one of the challenges that I always deal with, I've been dealing with this for 30 years, is that I'll set up a plan and I'll get this great insight from this program or this great insight from this or this great insight from this book, and I'm going to change it up. So then I come in to the office and I'm going to do some of these types of things. I'm not going to look at my emails as much. I'm not going to do these things. And then, within a week, I'm looking at my emails as much. I'm getting driven by my inbox. I'm not getting driven by my plan. What are your thoughts about, we talk about going in and reviewing everything, but I mean, on a short-term basis, how do you get that? I mean, I've heard, the 21-day plan, try to do these types of things for a little while, set kind of that habit. Any recommendations, thoughts there?
My first thought is, wow, Mike, we must be related because I struggle in the same thing. But in all honesty, there are so many different things out there. You can read Atomic Habits and you can read how to habit stack and how to make sure that you're thinking in advance to help yourself. And I think it's important to do these things to help yourself preempt some of the distractions that are coming in your life. So I know, like, when I'm coaching with someone and I'm helping them on focus, which again, I struggle with focus, and sometimes it's easier for somebody else to come in and to be that accountability. That's one of my main tips when it comes to setting goals is be open with somebody, tell them where you're struggling. But when you tell them, you're verbally processing a lot of the things, you're solving some of your problems without even knowing it. And then they can tell you, oh, you just solved that for yourself. You just basically said that whenever you go to your computer after lunch, you automatically start checking your inbox. Okay, well, now I know that when I come in from lunch, as soon as I go to do that, I'm going to stop myself and I'm going to set up a trigger and I'm going to stop. I'm going to make sure I don't scroll. So that's one of the things I've done for myself is when I want to set a new habit, which to me, that's kind of what this is. It's like focusing, a habit to help solidify my goals so that I'm actually going through and following through with the goals that I had and intentions that I made, is I need to set up new parameters and new structures around it. Otherwise, I go and slip right back into the same things. So I have to actually make things new, not just I'm not going to do it, but make things new. I'll give you one example. This is not necessarily a business example, but I think you'll be able to relate. I decided that as I was turning from 39 to 40, when I was turning 39, I was like, I want something to mark my 40th birthday, something big, something neat. And so I decided to not do sugar for a year. So from 39 to 40, I just decided to have no sugar. What did that do? Well, first of all, it helped show me how often I was eating sugar and not realizing it. I started reading labels. I started assessing my environment. I would go and just out of habit, I would just pick up something and go to put it in my mouth and like, oh, wait, oh my gosh, that's a peppermint at the bank. Like I didn't even realize that I would normally eat that. So in our business, we have those same things. Sometimes we have to just say no, like all out, not doing any of this. I'm only going to check my email, for instance, only from 1 to 2 p.m. That's it. And we have to be really strict with ourselves until we break those habits. So those are a couple things that I've been able to do for myself. Now I'm back to eating sugar again, and I find that it's difficult again. I am an all or nothing personality type. So you need to learn, again, remember how I said you need to know who you are as a person because it affects your business. Same for me. If I don't make sure and stack my appointments, my whole day will get away because I'm all or nothing. I need to be in the same mode the whole day. So you learn about yourself and then you take that and you plan based on that in order to match the goals that you want to achieve.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. One of the things that I think that a lot of times I see is that, like, for example, I've got this new project I'm working on. It's much bigger than anything we've ever done. It's something bigger than I've ever done. And I don't know what I'm doing. So, I'm trying to work on this, but I know one, that what I can do and what I'm pretty good at is checking email. So sometimes I default back to there. But sometimes also, as I'm working on this and as this is brand new and I'm still not totally sure what I'm doing, you know, this we talked a little bit about this, but this fear of failure kind of pushes in, and I know I have to push past that or I'll never do what I'm planning to do. So can you talk a little bit about some, we've talked some, but I mean, some of your thoughts about, owners specifically pushing past this fear of failure, um, so that they can create these new opportunities and actually pursue these new opportunities.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind that I think is so important is you need to have a community that wants your success as bad as you do. Now, no one's going to want it as bad as you do, but there are times where you're just going to want to fail. We do self-sabotage as business owners. And that's why sometimes, Mike, you go back to your emails because, like, okay, you know what? I don't want to deal with it because I'm just going to make myself fail because then at least I didn't have to find out that I couldn't do it. There are lots of different psychological reasons that we do those things. But if we have a community around us that cares, that we're checking in with, that it might be a mentor, it might be a coach, it might be a community or accountability partner you formed there at the deck or wherever you're working from. Sometimes, not always, it could be a spouse. In business relationships, that's not always the best situation because they may not understand or know what you're going through. And there are times to keep business and personal separate. But find people that are so for you and want your success that they're going to remind you that it is worth failing. We are going to fail. And it's okay because that's how we learn. And whenever we fail, we're learning something. And sometimes we're learning that actually wasn't the road that we were supposed to go down. It was this one. This project was actually this failure led us to this, just like it did with Thomas Edison with the light bulb, all of these things. So have that community that you can rely on, that you are in addition to having someone that is checking in on you, check in on other people. When you're serving others, when you are attentive to somebody else, you're going to be more attentive to yourself because you're not going to want to have that cognitive dissonance of like, oh, I'm reminding them not to check their email or whatever their goals are. But you're like, oh, but I just did mine, right? So you're going to be more attentive. It's going to be more self-awareness if you have that loop going on between whether it's one person or whether it's a group of people.
No, that's great advice. A lot of times with business owners, after they've been in business a little while, they've kind of, gone past the potential for the business to fail, that 3 to 5 years or whatever, and things are kind of cooking along. One of the things that the training that business owners tend to pursue more is this peer-to-peer type of network, this peer-to-peer type of education. So it's not sitting in a class per se and listening about how to do cash flow, because they do cash flow. But how does another business owner deal with something that you're dealing with? And that gets right to this community type of message that you talk about. And I always say it, I think that's one of the values of places like the deck, co-working type opportunities where you can actually have an entrepreneur, right next to you, right down, that you can go and chat with, that may have dealt with the same types of things. So I think that's really, really important. And I think that's great. The let's see. So I have my notes that I've been taking through the whole day, and they're now I can't remember where I'm at here.
Well, real
So
quick, I would just want to mention what you just mentioned about finding that community or that place. That would be one of those goals. And for me personally, last year, under relationships that I mentioned as one of my 5, I had a specific person that was going to be my accountability partner, and they were for the entire year. And then at the end of the year, it was no longer for either one of us. It just naturally was not the right fit anymore. So go ahead, and if you don't have something like that, write that down from one of your 2024 goals and make sure that that's something that you would leave with to either establish for your business, or if you need to find a community or whatnot.
Yeah, and one of the things when I ask you to do this, I think that one of the things that I wanted to come out of this is really kind of what you just talked about and the things that we've been talking about. So, uh, the SBDC, Bruce and I and the rest of the team, we do a lot of coaching, advising around the mechanics of business. But I think a lot of times people miss that other piece, getting the mentors, getting the other folks that can be of assistance to you. And what you just talked about, I think is excellent. And that kind of leads me to kind of my last question, where really, anything you want to add relating to kind of working with coaches and mentors and community and different things like that to allow you as the owner to grow and do what you want and be successful on this business side.
Yeah, as far as what to add, definitely don't think that you are not good enough to help somebody else. One of my coaches has always said, you are able to help someone who is one step behind you. If all of us as business owners have that mentality, and if we carry that on into our everyday life, and we carry that on into our teams and into our communities, and we have that helping mindset, just imagine how that authenticity and that vulnerability will be able to break down some of these imposter syndromes personally and uh, just for the whole world. I know that sounds like, oh my gosh, wow, but it's true. It really is. The more that we are open about, hey, you know what? I don't know this, but I do know this, and that's something I can help you with. Or, I'm struggling with this. Would you be willing to keep me accountable? I think that vulnerability and that authenticity is what is going to help us as business owners to get to where we need to be in 2024. Because for one, we started what we started with is that personal brand versus business persona. If they come closer together and if they are linked and they're meshed, the only way to do that is through vulnerability and authenticity, right?
Right.
So when we are that way, then we can show up. We can show up in a way that is going to relate to our clients, relate to those purchasing our products, relate to our team, because remember, they're people, our employees. So that is a huge piece that we didn't talk about as much, but at the same time, it's kind of a precursor to finding those coaches and those mentors and the people that we are going to mentor and that we're going to be able to serve as well.
Great advice. Great advice. So we're going to get ready to wrap up here. I've got one more question, but before we get to that, I want to thank everyone who's here live. I want to thank everyone who jumps on the YouTube for this. If you do get on YouTube, please go ahead and like the video. It does help us with what we're trying to do here. And I want to thank Susie, Chaz, the deck, everything that you guys are doing. I mean, it's really amazing to support the entrepreneur, to get them kind of at least in an environment where they have the opportunity to kind of connect and do different things. And we're gonna working on that for the future, from things going around what we're going to be doing with the small business breakthroughs. So we are excited for the future and what we're doing. And obviously, Renee, I really appreciate you coming on with us today. I think this has been fantastic. I appreciate everything that you're doing, everything you're doing to support other people. Obviously, you're doing amazing work, um, you know, as a mother, as an entrepreneur, and everything else. So, congratulations on that. But you know, I really am happy that you jumped on here with us because I think it's bringing a different perspective than we are usually bring. Um, My last question for you, and you feel free to take as long as you want. Bruce said he can stay, so if this question and response is like 45 minutes, an hour, that's fine. But
Oh, we're good.
oh, just a couple minutes, okay. Um, so here it is. It's 1:30 on a Thursday for those of you that are here live. What would you say that somebody should do between now and say midnight tonight? What's one thing
Hmm.
that you would start? And I know everybody's got different things, but what would one thing that you think this will be good?
We talked about how it's important to make sure that you are in the right rooms at the right time. And if you came to this presentation live, there is a reason that you came to it. Now, whether or not we actually talked about or you got any answer to that specific reason that you came or what intrigued you, my guess is while you were listening, you didn't completely check out. And if you did, no judgment. But if you didn't, then go through whatever notes, if you took notes or anything you jotted down, and whatever you remember was a pertinent thing, and really focus on that between now and midnight. What is it why did that come to mind? Was it because you aren't currently up to par in that area in your life and your business? Or was it because it was new to you and you need to go research and explore it? Was it because it was something negative and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm doing this wrong and I need to stop? Whatever came to mind, take one thing away and hone in on that. If you don't know what to do with it, if you can't turn it into a goal yet, or you don't know what it's going to do for your business, go talk to someone else about it. But make that your focus for the rest of the day so that you're not taking 20 things. I'm sorry, but when I have a whole page of notes, it's overwhelming. So if you took notes, go through with a yellow highlighter. Like, oh, this is it. This is what I need to take away. You can always come back and watch it on YouTube later, but we really can only digest about one thing at a time if we're going to actually make it into either a habit or into something that's going to really move the needle in our business. So I would say take that one thing, work on it, reach out if you need any help with that to whoever, whether it's Mike, it's the deck, if I can be of help, or someone else in your sphere. But definitely don't leave it behind, or else you just wasted an hour of your time, and nobody wants that.
Great. Thank you. That's amazing advice. Where do you want people to go to find you?
You're welcome to connect on LinkedIn. Make sure you send me a message and say, hey, we just saw each other's faces, or black screen if that was you, on the SBDC breakthrough. Or Facebook, you're welcome to follow me there. I am on TikTok and Instagram as well. And you're welcome to reach out if in any way, shape, or form, messages or whatnot.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you on this today. I know that, I'm blessed to have the opportunity to know you, and we're really blessed to have you here today. So thank you for everything. And with that, we're going to go ahead and adjourn. Thank you all for participating today live with the Small Business Breakthrough. And if you're checking it out on YouTube, hopefully you're able to grab some things and like she said, grab one thing. Let's get to work on that. So thank you all. Have a great day, and best of luck to you going forward.